Welcome into the Take the North podcast presented by Odyssey. I am Dan Wiederer, pleased to be joined today by a very special guest, and maybe not a guest for much longer. He is Mark Grote, 670 The Score. Mark, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thrilled, humbled to be here with you, Wiederer, and Adam Studzinski producing the show. Honestly, I feel very, very much at home on the Take the North podcast. Thanks for having me on, man.
Happy to have you on. Hoping this becomes a regular thing now that we have an opportunity to make it a regular thing. So happy to have you here. Definitely missed you in London for what was a pretty eventful trip for the Chicago Bears and those of us who made the trip overseas. I am still a little bit out of it. My body clock was finally adjusting when it was time to get back on the plane to come back to O'Hare on on Monday. And so if I'm a little bit bleary on this podcast, you'll understand why.
It's such a bizarre. I mean, I know we've been through it, but was it 6 or 7 hour time change?
6 hour time change. And
6 hour
flight
time
back
change.
was 8 hours into the wind yesterday. So
Oh yeah. And while I did not make this trip, unfortunately, I did go back in 2019, and that was the year. You were there too, right, Dan, for 2019? And that was the year the Bears left later in the week, and the game was just a nightmare because of Josh Jacobs, because he was the first round pick that was essentially Khalil Mack. Mack had a lousy game. John Gruden making fun of Matt Nagy. I think that was also, wasn't that when Kyle Long was essentially fired?
Yeah, that was it. That was his last game, basically his last half as a Chicago Bear. I had forgotten about the John Gruden making fun of Matt Nagy. It was the boom thing, right? They were doing the boom thing in the locker room afterwards after they beat the Bears there, and ripping on Club Dub maybe. And
that's what it was. Yeah, I don't remember specifically, but yeah, there was some sort of not so subtle jab at Matt Nagy's Club Dub, and the Bears lost. It was a Chase Daniel game, but this thing, man. That's a domination right there. You got to see a good game out there too, Dan.
There's no question about it. We're going to get into that in a second. We'll get into some of my travels over to London, and we'll walk you through Caleb's day, Sunday, in London against the Jaguars, and take a look ahead as the Bears cross the bridge from their bye week into what is now a high-profile, big-stage, bright lights game against Washington Commanders in Week 8. Let's get into our opening drive.
It's time for the opening drive.
So first and foremost, I wanted to give you a couple highlights of my trip over to London. And one of the more enjoyable moments of Saturday afternoon came when Kevin Fishbane had to shoot over to meet a friend somewhere. I think it was in the Theater District of downtown London. And we wound up in a pub that was established in 1549. We're talking about like a 460 some odd year old pub. Had a Guinness out there. Really, really kind of cool to be part of the old school, so to speak, in that moment. And I'm sure you can appreciate the history when you're dropping down a pint.
Did they have any alcohol that had been distilled since that time? Because, you got to let that stuff sit, right?
Yeah, I'm not certain how that all worked with the distilling, but yeah, that was a good moment. Had my fair share of fish and chips while I was over there. Really good, fun trip. But as I mentioned in the opening, that first day is a body clock wrecker. I landed overnight flight from O'Hare to Heathrow, landed at 8 a.m. London time, had enough time to get through customs, get to an Uber that took me on a 75-minute ride to the media hotel, got there just in time for the media shuttle to be leaving. So I didn't even get to walk in the front door of the hotel before I had to get on a shuttle bus, go drive another 90 minutes on the shuttle bus to Hanbury Manor and Ware, way out in the countryside, to watch the Bears practice and conduct interviews that day. By the time we got to the late afternoon on that day, I was running on fumes, my man. And that is the biggest thing about that trip. As enjoyable as it is, that first flight over always wrecks me.
But that I saw the pictures that you guys were sending. You mentioned their practice site. That looked gorgeous, man.
It was very cool.
The English countryside, it was like, woo! You could hear the tones ringing in the background, and there are the Bears. They are practicing. It felt very, I don't know what the word is. There was something very romantic like football romantic about that whole scene. It just looked beautiful.
Yeah, and there was like the sky wasn't real. You know, there was like perfectly blue with some really cool English clouds, and you're just like, oh man, you could really put a filter on this, and maybe I'll hang it up in my office here and take a nice little picture to remember that part of the journey. One other notable thing for me, I wanted to pick your brain on this, is I send this to the booth for replay review, but I'm getting back on my return flight to Heathrow on Monday, and a very aggressive gate agent played the card of, hey, can you test your carry-on bag to see if it fits in that very unrealistic bag sizer that we keep near the front of every gate, and like, can you just see if it fits in there? 97% of bags that go onto airplanes don't fit in that sizer. Right. This guy wouldn't take any explanation otherwise. I tried to explain to him, I flew on this exact plane 3 days earlier, bag fit perfectly. My two seatmates had their bags fit perfectly. I've flown with this carry-on bag for 15 plus years, never had an issue on any normal size plane of fitting in an overhead, but it doesn't fit in the sizer. And so this bloke over there at LHR wasn't going to take any excuses for this. Had to check the bag. Kind of a pain in the ass. I'm wondering what your ruling is on the bag sizer at the gates of hotels.
Yeah, I've actually had that happen to me too in the past, where you end up having to check the bag. Here's what I'll say about. I'm a little conflicted on this one, Dan, because we want our airline attendants and workers to take their jobs seriously, because if they don't, then obviously there's a lot bigger problems. But do we want them to take it that seriously? Where, I mean, he's got to know exactly what you were saying. Now, I don't know. Was the flight packed? Was there any seats open on the plane?
No open seats, but the overhead bins on those, this is a 3-3-3 type of seating arrangement there. So you've got the both sides of the plane and then a middle with a 3-seat segment. So you've got overhead space more so than a regular normal plane that we typically take. And so there was no shortage of overhead space, even though the plane was full.
Okay. See, now then I will take your side on that, because that is something he should have done the work on and the research on. So I don't blame you giving him the sarcastic bloke. He deserves to be bloked for sure.
Yeah, he was a bloke for sure. We'll move on from that. We're back stateside. The Bears have retreated into wherever they go during the bye week. I'm sure some players are taking some tropical getaways. Some players are probably just kicking it on their couch for the week, but they're doing so with a ton of positive energy, a ton of confidence, a ton of momentum in what is the first 3-game winning streak of the Ryan Poles, Matt Eberflus era. Hard to believe that it took this long to get there, but we're there. And there's a lot to kind of put the magnifying glass over to figure out what's real and what isn't. When you kind of have seen where the Bears have gone since leaving Lucas Oil Stadium last month to where they are now, what do you make of this surge? 3-game winning streak, 4-2, right in the thick of things here. And obviously, like I said, feeling a lot of positive energy and confidence.
Yeah, if I really narrow it down, except for the Rams win, which, win is a win, I suppose, as people like to say, where Caleb Williams threw a lot of the underneath stuff, 157 yards in that game. Just looking at the TD, 0 picks in the game. Here's what I really like, though, was in the Carolina game and in the Jacksonville game, I saw a quarterback or a team winning in part because of the quarterback, which is not something we are used to saying. In the Carolina game, you had the DJ Moore, a 34-yarder. I know he had 2 TDs. Kmet had a 26-yarder. The 42-yard catch and run for DeAndre Swift. That's true explosive play stuff. That is a way that I want to see the Bears win, because the Bears have won in the past, but just doing it with defense and just enough offense, which I'm done with. And then in the same thing in the Jacksonville game, you get 2 touchdowns to Keenan Allen, who's so incredibly important to this team. The 2 TDs to Cole Kmet. Yep. And this is like legitimate quarterback stuff. So the legitimacy with which they won those 2 games, and I'm not completely leaving off the Rams game, but really those 2 were the ones that got me going, just because of the way they did it.
Yeah. And so look, like, we're going to hear a lot in the next week and a half about the degree of difficulty of these games the Bears have won. We know the opponents they've played have not been the best. I wrote that if the Jaguars and Panthers aren't the worst 2 teams in the NFL right now, they're certainly 2 of the worst 5. And so that's undeniable. But it's not like the Bears had to scrape by to beat them. And the fact that they've gone on this 3-game winning streak without trailing for a second after halftime tells you that it's a team capable of handling its business, right? And that's what we're looking for from this group. Is it a group that can handle its business? I thought you brought up a great point in kind of feeling the surge of energy that comes with an offense that can go out and take over a game, which they did Sunday. 5 touchdowns on 6 possessions. That's so un-Bears-like. We'll talk about it a little bit later in our QB1 segment with some statistical historical data to tell you how un-Bears-like it is. But you've got a group now that is capable of winning games in all 3 phases, and they're capable of doing so with a quarterback.
But yeah, I mean, and the not scraping by, as you said, I mean, that is so huge because, and I know people get pissed off when we bring up the past and other quarterbacks, but I'm going to keep doing it. I'm not going to be afraid to do it. There's no way that with Justin Fields as the quarterback last year, the Bears score 36 points and 35 points in succession. I don't care who it is. That's what good teams, like if they squeak by these teams or if they got lucky, and we've seen enough Bears games to know that's happened a ton of times where it wasn't sustainable. This stuff, again, against really good teams, the way the Bears played, those are probably wins as well. Maybe not by 15 and 16 points, but I think that there's still victories. And here's another thing, too. You and I were there for just about every single OTA and every day in training camp. And it like Caleb Williams was making plays that kept us believing that this guy was great, but the defense outplayed Caleb Williams the majority of training camp.
Yep.
So we're already seeing him get better. And so if you want to look at it like that playing these 2 bad teams, and they are bad teams, and that does belong in the formula, no doubt about it. I will not discount that. But look at it as development and things that Caleb Williams would not have been capable of doing in July.
What's cool about it, and I'll take that 2 different directions, is that the competition that he faced every single day in an extended training camp, remember they reported a week early because of the Hall of Fame game, was a heightened degree of difficulty than what he's faced these last 3 weeks, right? You've got one of the better defenses in the league challenging you every day throughout the summer. And then you get into these games against these opponents that don't have very good defenses, and you go, whoa, this is comfortable. Like I can find my confidence and command early in games and I can roll. And you've seen Caleb respond to that. Along with that, I had written something in my piece leading up to Sunday's game in London about the fact that the schedule makers gave the Bears the ideal springboard for a rookie quarterback trying to build confidence before the bye week. You know what I mean? You've got these 3 consecutive defenses, even 4 going back to the Colts game, who we knew were vulnerable against the run, and the Bears didn't do as much as they should have in that loss in Indianapolis. But you had a succession of stairs here that were really easy for the Bears to kind of get themselves rolling, and tremendous credit goes to them for taking advantage of it, for putting together winning game plans the last couple of weeks and finding kind of that rhythm and that flow that they had been seeking. Look, you can only play who's in front of you. And I will readily acknowledge that these were some bad defenses that they faced, but boy, that's a great place to be in for a young quarterback who just needs to have some tangible success in the NFL to say, I've had tangible success in the NFL.
When the schedule first came out, I hated it. I didn't like it because of it feels like since I've been covering the Bears since 2018, it feels like just about every year the season started with a boom, usually against Green Bay or something like that. Like we saw that in many of the previous years. But yeah, they don't play a divisional game until November 17th. And now I love it. I mean, I wasn't really thinking then because this division is we know that it's good. And I still think that every team in that division is better than the Bears right now, but they're starting to close the gap. And maybe by November 17th, when they have, Green Bay at home, Minnesota at home, and then at Detroit, 3 straight division games. I mean, looking at it right now, that is tough, and I don't know how the Bears are going to fare, but I do know that they will fare better than they would have had it been early in the season. Matter of fact, I think those teams probably early on in the season would have beaten the Bears, maybe even have blown them out.
No question. I've said you create your own relevance in this league, and the Bears have created their own relevance, so much so that we are going to go into week 8 with the Bears being flexed from noon to 3:05. They replaced Bengals and Eagles. Yeah. Bears Commanders replaces Bengals Eagles on the docket, which tells you they are now relevant. They are now in the spotlight. They now have an up-and-coming quarterback facing another up-and-coming quarterback, and all of a sudden the next chunk, Matt Eberflus has kind of broken this into, like 6 weeks pockets for his team. The next 6 weeks have a ton of relevance attached to them. And the 6 weeks beyond that will be created with whatever they're able to do in this next stretch. And so that's fun. That's fun to be a part of.
Yeah, and thank God for the flex. Like, one thing I did like about the schedule is that the schedule makers did not go overboard in terms of putting the Bears on the prime time evening games. I mean, they have obviously the game at Houston. They've got the next, I think, evening game when I'm talking about the prime time at Minnesota. Yeah, Minnesota, December 16th. And then they have a home game the day after Christmas against Seattle. That's another one of their night games as well. And then I think the 3:05 games, they've got the November 3rd at Arizona, at least right now, and then at San Francisco, 3:25. So for me, that was enough because I've had enough of the nation seeing the slop that the Bears had been in previous years. So now you could start to put the Bears where they belong, assuming they keep doing what they're doing.
One last thing for me on this topic, and we'll shift gears to Caleb Williams in a moment. There's two teams for me that sort of fit into the same category in terms of teams that got off to fast starts and you're trying to figure out, was it real or not? The 2012 Vikings were a group that got off to a 4-2 start, similar position that the Bears were in, where everyone was like, is this actually happening? Is this something that can sustain itself? And they ended up losing 4 of their next 6. And so they ended up dropping back to 500, but they created enough cushion with that 4-2 start and enough belief in that locker room to steady themselves through the rocky patches that they came back, won their last 4, ended up getting the wild card that year and knocking the Bears out of the playoffs with a win on the final Sunday of the season. And so that cushion that you're able to create in the early part of the season is meaningful. Now, the other one you were a part of, 2020, the Bears got off to a 5-1 start. I think at the time we were all going, this doesn't pass the eye test. I think we're all kind of thinking that this one passes the eye test. That one in 2020, you're like, man, I don't know if they can keep winning in this fashion. Nick Foles replaced Mitch Trubisky in that game in Atlanta, led the dramatic comeback. They won a couple more games beyond that, and they seemed to have some mojo going, but there wasn't enough high-level, complementary, 3-phase dominant football that led you to believe this team's for real. They ended up going on, I think it was a 6-game losing streak that year. I get my losing streaks mixed up after this long on the beat. And ultimately, we knew then that they were dead in the water. They ended up being dead in the water and got blown out of a playoff game in New Orleans.
With an 8-8 record, they went to the playoffs, by the way.
I bring that up, though, because that early start, that 5-1 start, gave them enough cushion to actually claim a playoff berth. And so you've given yourself a little bit of room here, some breathing room where you don't have to panic if you hit a little skid here in November, if you hit a little skid here in early December. You hopefully have created enough momentum and cushion to withstand that and get yourself into a playoff. But I think you're probably with me that this feels like a Bears team that has a lot more staying power than that 2020 group had in terms of the way they're winning.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. And there's so many examples in Bears history, period, where we've seen these pop-up seasons. Like I go back to even 2001.
Oh, yeah.
Which was a great, fun season. That was the season where you had the back-to-back weeks against San Francisco and Cleveland and Mike Brown with the walk-offs. And it was just a blast of a season. Those linebackers, Roosevelt Colvin and Warwick Holdman. And was that Urlacher's first? I don't know if that
Urlacher's there. Keith Traylor had the interception against the Jaguars.
Right. Ted Washington.
Yeah.
And then they got Hugh Douglas in the playoffs. And, Jim Miller was broken. And the whole thing crashed and burned. I think I'd have to go back and look. I think they were 3-13 the next season under Dick Jauron. And then Jauron was fired 2 years later.
Yeah, and may have started.
That's just 1 year. I mean, I can go through a whole bunch of these, but that is symbolic of you got to watch these games. You can't just look at the standings, and a win is not a win with the Bears if you've been watching Bears football long enough.
There's no question about it. And so anyway, they've got themselves some cushion to take into the bye week, and they got themselves a quarterback to take in the bye week. So let's get into our QB1 segment right now. All right, Mark, typically after every Bears game, we do a little thing called the QB1 segment where we go category by category and discuss Caleb's performance or whoever the QB1 happened to be. For a couple of years, it was Justin Fields. So we're going to start here with the defining moment from Sunday's game in Jacksonville. And for me, it's pretty easy to identify that because there is an opportunity in 3rd and inches on Sunday to really take the top off of defense. And you bring in Karan Amagaji and Doug Kramer as your extra offensive lineman. and you dial up a shot play. You dial up play action to DJ Moore running deep down the left sideline, and it is wide open from the press box. The minute Caleb put in his play action fake, you're like, that thing is there. That thing is there to be hit. And what happens? Caleb's a little late with the throw. He's a little inside with the throw. He doesn't put enough juice on the throw, and it's easily intercepted by Andre Cisco. And you're like, oh, man, that is a wasted opportunity in a big moment in a stadium that was ready for you to put on a fireworks show. Okay, what do you do with that? I think that was the biggest question that you were facing after they left those points on the table, were how would Caleb respond? Rookie quarterback, overseas, international game, trying to figure out what to do with an ugly turnover. And what does he do, Grote? The next 4 times he has the football in his hands, he leads touchdown drives. The Bears go touchdown, 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 touchdown after that interception. And to me, that's as defining as it gets for a young quarterback to put that away as fast as he did, to come back, in his words, pissed off and even more motivated than he had been to get the offense rolling again. To respond like that, I think, said volumes about the quarterback that they have under center right.
Agreed. And I will see your bad pass to DJ Moore and raise you a throwing the football off of 79 Matt Pryor. And then, as you said, then eventually getting his act together. I love to, like, the Keenan Allen stuff was terrific, specifically the fade to him in the back left corner of the end zone. I think that was on a 3rd down play as well. Like, I love that. Not just, I mean, it was a terrific throw. The touch was there so many times watching the Bears through the years. That ball is just overthrown. It's just, or the receiver catches it and he's out of bounds. You have a professional quarterback and a expert receiver on the other end of that play as well. So that was the play that really got my attention in terms of degree of difficulty, and something we just don't see a whole lot anymore.
I'm with you. For me, on the bright side of the 2 touchdowns that Keenan Allen had, I think the 2 touchdowns to Cole Kmet are cool in their own way, but they didn't require a lot from the quarterback. The first one is set up by play design, and Cole's running wide open down the seam. The second one, he gets basically a busted coverage in the end zone, is able to hit him. The 2 to Keenan Allen, those are dots. And those are throws that stars in this league make. And I went back and watched them on Monday, Grote, and the thing that was bouncing around my head the entire time, you mentioned the fade and the placement of that ball, and you mentioned the other one in the back of the end zone where he's basically got to split 2 defenders with a ball to where Keenan can adjust his body, back shoulder, and make a catch on it in the back of the end zone. And you think about the years that preceded this, and you say somebody would have thrown up a video or a still shot of those 2 plays in years past and said no one's open. Right. And the quarterback would have either taken a sack or thrown an incompletion, and he would have been given a pass because no one was open. And then the guy with the star power says, he's open enough, and I'm going to put this ball where a star quarterback should put the football. One's a fade, one's the back of the end zone, back shoulder shot. And they're absolute bullseyes to a receiver that makes a great play on them. And all of a sudden you got yourself 2 touchdowns instead of an argument on Twitter about was anyone open.
Right. Or an argument on Twitter, people ripping Keenan Allen, saying he wasn't worth it and he's getting fat. He doesn't belong on the Bears. Like, all these things that have been thrown out there. And look, man, hey, when he, I think it was the Carolina game. Was it the Carolina game that he came out of the locker room and he was not available in the locker room that day at Soldier Field. And it was like, I was like, oh man, and he was fine. And I'm glad there was nothing wrong, but it was just weird because he still wasn't getting his at that point. And so the antennas went up for me, and I said, oh man, he's not getting the ball. Is he unhappy? Is this not working out? So for so many reasons, it was so important that Keenan Allen did what he did. And I can't even tell you which play it was. I think it was probably second half. It was a simple, 3rd and 5 pass over the middle to Keenan Allen. And I was like, and a first down throw by Caleb Williams. I'm thinking, yeah, this is part of what we know about Keenan Allen, a 3rd down machine. And there it was. So he made the spectacular plays, and then he is there for Caleb Williams, quarterback friendly, making 3rd down plays like he's done in his entire career.
It's really fun to watch guys work like that and get in that rhythm and find that magic together. My moment was what you brought up a few minutes ago. It was that pass into Matt Pryor's face mask, because that's early in a game and it's with the entire country watching because there's no other game on at that point. And your social media feed started to be filled with things from people going, oh, here we go, Bears quarterback again on display. You know, they pull the curtains back and we've got a guy chucking fastballs into the face mask of their guard. And it was during an offensive start again where the Bears started slowly again. I think their opponent has scored first in every single game this season. The Bears offense hasn't been able to get off to many quick first quarter starts. And that was a little bit of a snapshot into here's another slow start. And here's another ugly looking play that the rest of the world can laugh at. That was one of the few uh-oh moments, but it was certainly an uh-oh moment.
By the way, I apologize for jumping ahead on all of these things. I'm not realizing that I did that. I'll get this rhythm down here.
It's fine. We can adjust and adapt, just like Shane and Caleb do. We're very adaptable.
Yeah, man. I can't stick to a script, man. I'm improv all the way, But yeah, honestly, like as much as I want to see Caleb Williams play well, and I guess we're all prone to giving people like that the benefit of the doubt. When he made that play, I tweeted, "That's embarrassing." It was embarrassing. That's what it was. And I was like, because there's been moments in the Caleb Williams career so far with the Bears, like every single game where I'm like, and this is ridiculous that I say this and think this, but where I'm like, oh man, is he bad? Is he not good? Is he too short? Does he not have accuracy? Is he going to overthrow everybody? Am I wrong about this guy? And so but all along, I have felt that we would see what we have seen out of Caleb Williams, and he's got a long way to go, but so far so good, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, look, like you've been beating the drum that there's greatness in there and that there's greatness that's going to come out. Our big number as we wrap up the QB1 segment is 10. It's the number of offensive touchdowns the Bears have scored in the last 2 games. 10 offensive touchdowns. It used to take a month and a half, Grote, to get 10 offensive touchdowns. I could probably dig up a whole bunch of stuff from my dusty archives here of times during the Nagy era, the Fox era, where you couldn't get 10 offensive touchdowns in a calendar month most of the time. The Bears have had it in the last 2 games. The last time that the Bears scored 5 offensive touchdowns in consecutive games, 1956. I know Studs wasn't alive back then. I know I wasn't alive back then. I'm pretty sure you weren't alive back then. It's a long time ago. That's before the Super Bowl era began, a full decade before they started playing Super Bowls. That's the last time the Bears scored 5 offensive touchdowns in consecutive games. The coach back then, good old Patty Driscoll, with George Blanda as your quarterback, in case you were looking for some perspective.
Oh, Patty Driscoll. Yeah. And again, back to one of the growing themes of this show. It didn't seem cheap. It didn't seem contrived. It didn't seem like, obviously, again, bad defenses, and you can't not take that into consideration. But you've seen a quarterback making ridiculously good and, dare I say, at times, elite passes. So again, they're not going to score 5 touchdowns in every game, but there is a sustainability about the explosiveness of this offense, that it's there, that it's in their back pocket. And there's going to be another game where Caleb Williams, is going to maybe throw a couple picks, maybe only throws for 150 yards or whatever the case may be, and look bad. But we now know that they are capable of making explosive plays and winning because of them.
No question. That's a big thing for them to take forward as they go into the second section. Let's get into our next segment. Okay, so that's a natural transition here, Grote, to some audio that I wanted to play of Keenan Allen from London, because I thought it was pretty notable, pretty humorous, pretty interesting to hear his take on the offense hitting its stride at this point after a rough start to the season. So let's just turn it over to the guy who scored 2 touchdowns on Sunday and obviously is feeling the growth that the rookie quarterback is making. Here's Keenan Allen talking about the growth of the offense.
First couple of weeks, defense was playing huge. Offense wasn't really doing a lot. Now we're coming out, we're scoring some more than we were, and scoring a lot of points. So, it makes it easier for the defense. I was just talking to Montez. He was like, man, I was getting frustrated. Y'all kept converting on 3rd down. I was ready to go back out there. I'm trying to get a sack. I'm like, yeah, it's going to be like that sometime. So, as long as everybody's complimenting each other, special teams playing good, and you got a chance.
That is a defensive player, Mark Grote, commenting to an offensive player that he's frustrated with them because they're staying on the field too long. I laughed out loud. I think you probably heard my laugh in the background of that clip from that press conference room, because I was like, what world are we living in here where the defense's frustration of the offense in Chicago is now related to the fact that the guy who wants to go sack the quarterback isn't getting enough opportunity to do so because the offense is sustaining drives and scoring touchdowns every time they touch the football.
I remember Matt Nagy always talking about that, saying, hey, yeah, this defense is great, but there's going to be weeks where we're going to pick them up too, and we're going to score the points. And it never did happen except for one afternoon at Soldier Field against Tampa Bay, where Mitch Trubisky threw 6 touchdown passes and obviously was not sustainable. But yeah, man, that I don't know if we know how to handle that kind of stuff. So you laughing is the appropriate reaction, like, because it's just not something that we're used to. But I love it. I love it.
The Bears had 216 yards in the second quarter alone on Sunday. That was mind-blowing after they had a 7-yard first quarter. And they put together that sequence of 6 drives where it was 5 touchdowns and an interception that should have been a touchdown if the quarterback made a good throw. And you're like, man, this group is rolling right now, and they're in their groove. And it's so un-Bears-like because you're just not used to seeing that groove. And there was a stretch from early in the second quarter to early in the third quarter where the Bears ran 32 plays, the Jaguars ran 8. And so you can understand Montez, the guy with the best laugh in the locker room, standing over the sideline being like, when am I going to get a chance to go hunt Trevor Lawrence here? Well, you're not, because the Bears just keep moving the football. And every time the defense got on the field, they either forced a 3-and-out or got a takeaway, as it was in the start of the second half with Tremaine Edmonds popping that ball out. That's Kevin Byard said in the locker room after the game that this is what it's supposed to look like. And that really stuck with me because I'm like, yeah, man, you're right. This is what it's supposed to look like. You're supposed to have an offense that's capable of carrying the load, and you're supposed to have a defense that knows who it is. And the Bears have had that the last 3 weeks. Now, it'll be tested again, as we've mentioned, in the months ahead. But this is what it's supposed to look like, isn't it, Mark?
Yeah, I mean, and Kevin Byard said something similar to that after the Carolina game too, where they beat Carolina 36-10, and he was like, that should be the standard. And I'm like, wow, that's asking a lot. I mean, that's setting a pretty high precedent, but to your point, that is the way it's supposed to look. And hey, I mean, we haven't really talked much about the fact that these receivers have gotten going. And I do think, like, everybody asks, like, what's the identity of the team? And everybody wants to say, well, running the football and, all this. No, the identity of the Bears is those 3 wide receivers. That's what they want. And Cole Kmet and those catching the football. But I'll take what DeAndre Swift did in this last week as well, man. If he gets, I don't have the exact, I was trying to get the numbers up on him, but it was like something like 17 carries, 95 yards. I'll take that every week from DeAndre Swift, running between the tackles and then using the outside as well after they set it up down the middle. He looks like a different dude. And all of this since Indianapolis, like it might have been, this sounds ridiculous too, the loss to Indianapolis was an important loss because so much came out of it. Eberflus got his act together after that because he had a bad day. Shane Waldron had the quarterback throw the ball 53 times in that game. It was also after that game that Mercedes Lewis spoke out and said that they want more from their coaches. So much good has come from what was, it was a bad day in Indianapolis.
It's funny because we came out of that Indianapolis loss and I started, playing the Bears doom game in my head and saying, I said that the game against Carolina had the potential to be a lever loss, one of those losses where the trapdoor opens up beneath you and your whole season falls out, right? And so you were looking at that coming out of Indianapolis, and now what we've seen instead is victory over the Rams, blowout of the Panthers, blowout of the Jaguars, and a team that clearly has the mojo that they're looking for going forward. And so I think it's going to be pretty impressive to see how they build on that. Kevin Byard has a very Ryan Poles-like outlook on things where he doesn't care about the past, and all the history that sort of sticks in the brains of people like you and me. It doesn't matter to Kevin Byard. It doesn't matter to Ryan Poles. That they understand what they've got within this locker room, within this team, within this season. And I think there's something to that of not being burdened by the baggage and having the opportunity to kind of go play free, change the culture, and do some memorable things while the rest of the world worries about what it's going to turn into to become a very Bears-like season when it's unfolding in such un-Bears-like fashion right now.
And to add to Ryan Poles' part, I could tell he's sick of hearing about it too.
Oh, yeah.
And he's got no choice. You know what I mean? Like you have, just like we have talked about, you have to take the Bears' past into consideration. You can't not do that. And I think part of it is he doesn't want to hear about it. So he is going to make the changes when needed to make sure it doesn't happen. Going back to his early meeting with Caleb Williams and Carl Williams, Caleb Williams' dad, and he challenged with, how is it going to be different? Which is the $1 million question that you and I want to know, and that every single Bears fan ever wants to know, is how is it going to be different this time? And Ryan Poles, in a figurative sense, is telling Bears fans, I understand. I got it. I'm sick of hearing about it, but I got it. I'm not going to let this happen again.
I think the last time you were on the podcast, we said, if it doesn't work this time, ... right? Like that was what we were saying, right? Like this is the all in gamble here. And hopefully it will be different for everyone involved, because I think the whole city is sort of owed that at this point for the investment they've had in this franchise.
Oh, I mean, I can't, like, back to that. If this doesn't work, it still gives me nightmares, because how many more times can Bears fans get their hope up to a 10? And I give them a lot of credit, because Bears fans' hope was at a 10 again when they drafted Caleb Williams. It was at a 10 when they drafted Justin Fields. I've never seen anything like that in terms of excitement when they drafted Justin Fields. Mitch Trubisky, people love Jay Cutler. And so my guess is that if it doesn't work out, Bears fans will still come back, but I just think it's going to be a little bit more difficult if it's not to work out, but it seems to be trending workout.
Trending toward workout. All right, let's get into our 2-minute drill.
The 2-minute drill. The 2-minute drill.
All right, Mark, this is the 2-minute drill. We go no huddle, we go up tempo, we hit a bunch of topics, and we roll quickly. So we're going to start with the defensive backfield, which obviously has some Band-Aids to apply after coming back from London with Jaquan Brisker in concussion protocol, Tyreek Stevenson with a calf injury, Kyler Gordon left that game in the second half with a hamstring injury. Going to be interesting to see who's ready, who's available, who can they take to Washington in a starting role given those injuries.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm always skeptical when Elijah Hicks is pressed into having to play too much, or Jalen Jones or Josh Blackwell, because they're backups. But man, I'll be damned if every time those guys play, they are professional backups, but really good at their jobs. Eventually, those guys typically will get exposed, but they have been ridiculously good. The way I heard Matt Eberflus talking, and it's hard to really infer too much about injuries. He sounded pretty positive or pretty optimistic about those guys about Jaquan Brisker making his way back, as well as who else am I missing? Stevenson. I mean, my gut feeling is that those guys will be back for the Washington game.
As you mentioned, round of applause to Jalen Jones, Josh Blackwell, and Elijah Hicks for stepping up the way they did. Week 8 at Washington. That game has been flexed, as we talked about earlier in the show. This is a spotlight game. Jim Nantz, Tony Romo on the call. So you're going to get some more eyes on the Caleb Williams versus Jaden Daniels matchup, which has really dominated the morning talk shows for a month now.
Yeah, it's going to be thrilling to watch that. And this is going to be one of those games where I would not be annoyed by any of the hype, and that this game, of course, I mean, it's almost pathetically perfect. You have the top 2 rookie quarterbacks who you and I got to talk to both at the NFL Combine, and we remember seeing Jaden Daniels rise right up to Caleb Williams almost in real time during that Combine, and both took Caleb a second to get going. Both have looked terrific. I can't wait for that game. I'm dreading being asked for my pick for that game because I'm having a hard time already.
You got like a week and a half to get there. So,
yes.
So take your time, do your research. If you need to do more research over the weekend and you're bored on Sunday, the Commanders play the Carolina Panthers.
Oh, there we go.
3:05 game on Sunday. So if you're looking to check in on the Commanders and how they match up against a common opponent against the Bears, we'll see how they can do on Sunday. Caleb also going home to DC. That'll be a storyline in week 8 as well, seeing how he navigates that. I imagine he'll have a ton of familiar faces in the stands around that stadium, and we'll see how he handles that trip.
Yeah, and look, that it's always weird. Like I heard, the questions being asked, can Caleb Williams handle it and all this? Of course he can handle it, but it's like that for any player. It doesn't matter if you're a rookie or in your 5th year. When you go home and you're a star player and you're playing in front of your friends and your family and the place in which you grew up, it's always going to be a little bit weird, and it's possible you're going to want to do a little bit too much. So I think that kind of stuff does have to be taken into account.
A lot of people want to see you. A lot of people want tickets from you. A lot of people need you before the game, and then as you mentioned, you're going to be on stage in front of them, and you may want to put on a show. Caleb certainly has shown the maturity in a lot of different settings here since he became a Bear that tells you he'll be okay, but it's certainly worth keeping an eye on.
Yeah, I mean, and I hope that he has a cutoff point for friends and family. I don't know. Caleb as you and I are finding out, he's a different animal, like in terms of a personality and the calm with which he carries himself, even in the locker room, like after he's done podium stuff, he's just hanging out by his locker. He's a cool customer, but I hope that he is advised to, okay, get all your requests in, get all the tickets taken care of, and then do all the interviews and then cut it off at some point in time.
Call my mom and dad. They'll help handle things, right? That's the advice at some point. Very last thing, the Bears will have another injury to keep an eye on. Long snapper Scott Daly left that game in the first half. That obviously forced Cole Kmet into emergency long snapping duties. There's reports that Scott Daly doesn't have any serious damage to his left knee, but who knows if he'll be ready to play the next time the Bears take a football field on the Sunday of Week 8. The Bears may have to hold long snapper tryouts here soon. I don't think Cole really wants to raise his hand and keep that job for a long time. Really interesting to see where that goes. Patrick Scales still on IR, designated to return, but a few weeks away yet. That is one on the footnote part of Week 8 that we're going to have to keep tabs on when the week begins early next week.
I couldn't help but wondering if other long snappers around the league, when Cole Kmet comes in and he's relatively successful, are like, well, what the hell? So you just bring in this guy, this tight end off the bench, and he comes in, and again, he wasn't perfect with his snaps, but you'd think that if he practiced that a little bit more, he'd be pretty good at it. But no, of course, you don't want to put Cole Kmet in that position, and it will get scary as these games get bigger if the Bears don't have, because that, as we all know, you never want to notice what's going on with the long snapper, but there will be long snapper tryouts. I'll let you take care of covering the long snapper because I'm still just learning Scott Daly.
I have a reliable teammate who can really dig in on long snapper tryouts. Kudos to Brad Biggs, who will have that story blanketed over the next 2 weeks. I will say this, that Cole did what he could. Really notable that they didn't punt again after he took over long snapping duties. They scored so much that it was just 5 extra point snaps and a field goal attempt snap for Cole Kmet. And he didn't have to snap to Torrey Taylor as a punter at all in that game. So he didn't have to test that part of his game out. Did pretty well overall. The field goal that got blocked, Carlos Santos said, obviously with a non-professional long snapper, apologies to Cole, that it's just a little bit slower. You don't have the same accuracy issues. And so it just slows down the operation enough. Jaguars were rushing hard, kick got blocked. And so that's why there are professional long snappers who specialize in only long snapping in the league, because it is a trade, as Patrick Manley will tell you, that takes a high level of skill and a high level of precision.
Yes, I apologize to all the long snappers if I scared you talking about Cole Kmet being able to go into it and do it. Hey, man, Patrick Manley doesn't have to apologize to anybody. He's living his best life these days.
Well, Mark, this was fun. I think it was good enough that we can do it again pretty soon in the near future. What do you think?
Okay. I'll try to follow along a little bit better next time and not jump ahead. But yeah, no, this is great, man. And how are you? Are you okay? Like, I think you did pretty well considering you're still in a little bit of a haze.
I mean, I probably still need a nap, maybe 2, maybe 3, but I'm doing okay. The Chicago has done a nice job of keeping me acclimated here. It's rainy, it's cold, it's just like London here back home already. So I've got that going for me, which is nice.
Yeah, well, I was just on Lower Wacker Drive about an hour ago, and they're literally, I'd say, 200 cops down there because there's a certain former president that's in town right now. So I'm just glad to be in my my abode right here in Oak Park right now.
Easier podcast to do right here. We don't need to get into all that. That's for another episode. Election's coming up in a few weeks. We'll do an election edition maybe.
Oh, yeah. People will love that.
That's Mark Grote. I'm Dan Wiederer. Remember to like and subscribe to the podcast. Tell your friends about Take the North. We'll have much more content to come this week, even throughout the bye week. And then obviously as we cross the bridge into that high-profile game, Bears Commanders in Week 8. For Mark Grote, I'm Dan Wiederer. For our producer, Adam Stadzinski, take care, everybody. Great talk. See you out there.
Take care.